I'm Nedra Knurk, and I'm president of Futura RGV, and I want to welcome our candidates, our moderator, Steve Taylor, and all of our FaceTime viewers out there who are tuning in to find out more about the candidates for Texas House District 37. And Futuro is hosting these forums. It's part of our mission to inform and educate our communities in the RGV about issues that affect their quality of life. And we feel that good government is a very important part of that. So obviously, the candidates who want to be your leaders are people that you need to know more about. And these forums will be on our Facebook page and our website so that you can view them anytime, day or night, up until Election Day. And we hope that you will spread the word that get to know your candidate by going on the Futura RGV Facebook. So we do want to thank our board members, our advisors, and our sponsors who really are so valuable in helping us bring this to you. And our sponsors, I do want to name them. They are AT&T, Sam Garcia Architect, Rhodes Enterprises, Clark Chevrolet, Valley Land Title, Frost Bank, IBC Bank, DHR Health, Rio Bank, L&F Distributors, Ernie William, and our in-kind sponsors, Copy Zone, Upper Valley Mail Service, and CSL Productions, which is Milo Rodriguez, who is our tech expert who is behind the scenes and bringing this so that you can see it on Facebook. We also want to give special thanks to our media partners, AIM Media. Did you know AIM Media owns the Monitor and the Brownsville Herald, and they have been very helpful with their technical expertise and their facilities in helping us bring many of these forums to you. So with that, then I want to tell you about the League of Women Voters. We are also partnering with them, and they have some very valuable information for all of your voters. And Sophia Kennedy with the League of Women Voters, will you tell our viewers what they can find out about if they go to your page?
Yes, of course. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Nedra and candidates and Steve. I'm Sophia Kennedy with the League of Women Voters and also with the Texas Turnout Coalition. And what we are doing is we're putting together a voter's guide, which will have for the voters information on the candidate and their perspectives, their ideas, their viewpoints, their goals, what they plan to put forth in as far as their platform and so forth. And every voter can access this. They'll be able to go to vote411.org. And also our Texas Turnout Coalition is putting together a voter's guide that'll be accessible as well to any voter. So we think it's very important. It's a very important tool that'll be helpful to every voter. And soon candidates will receive a survey, and also we're taking note of your perspectives tonight. So good luck, all the best. And thank you for having us, Nedra. Thanks.
Well, we really appreciate partnering with the League of Women Voters. So at this point, though, I think it's time to turn it over to Steve Taylor, our moderator from RG Guardian. See, I'm so used to saying RGV, Rio Grande Guardian. And Steve Taylor, you are on.
Thank you, Nedra, and thank you to the candidates that are appearing today on this candidates forum. There are three candidates. We're looking today, having a conversation with the candidates for House District 37. That's Texas House District 37. The district has been changed rather radically from last go round. I hope we're going to learn more about the district from the candidates that are here tonight, because it includes most of Cameron County, perhaps, except most of Brownsville. It's all of Cameron County plus Willacy County. Willacy County previously was not in District 37. It is now. And there are three candidates, as I said. At the moment, one of the candidates, Frank Puente, is not here. Hopefully he'll join us before the hour is up. But we do have, I'm delighted to say, Mr. Ruben Cortez and Mr. Luis Villarreal. Welcome to you both. And just so the viewers will know, and particularly the voters of District 37 will know, we're going to give each candidate a minute and a half for an opening statement. And there's a specific question we have that the candidates are aware of for that 1.5 minutes of opening statements. And then we'll have a series of questions that are 1 minute, that each candidate will have 1 minute. And then we'll have 1 minute closing remarks at the end. We will go in ballot order for the first question, and we've chosen the Cameron County ballot order to start with. So Ruben Cortez will answer the question first. He came out in the ballot in Cameron County as the first candidate on the ballot, then Mr. Luis Villarreal, and then Mr. Puente if he arrives. And then after that, we will rotate. These questions have been put together by a special committee of Futuro RGV. I'm a guest moderator from the Rio Grande Guardian and happy to be here. So let's get started with the opening remarks. First of all, for you, Ruben, could you make a 1.5 minute opening statement and also address this question? Besides the people in our District 37, what do you see as the biggest single asset and also the single greatest concern, and how would you address that concern?
A great question. Hello, I'm Ruben Cortez. Thank you, Futuro RGV, our moderator, Steve, and all of you in the audience for being here today. I was born and raised in South Texas. I'm a husband of 22 years, going on 23, a father of 4. And I think that there's nothing more important in our community than family. Families are our biggest asset. That's why I've spent the last decade as your representative on the Texas Board of Education. I'm proud to have worked across party lines to oppose high-stakes testing, expand services for students with disabilities, and creating the state's first Mexican-American studies. At the same time, I've seen how the Texas legislature has made things harder in our community. They're always too busy playing politics and ignoring us. Our families, I believe, demand better. That starts with our schools. No one in this race is more prepared to lead on issues of education. It's time that we cancel the STAR and pay teachers better wages. We agree that our schools should be safe, healthy, and open. On issues of healthcare, we need to expand Medicaid and lower drug prices. We need to fix our power grid. We need to bring high-paying jobs to South Texas and fix our roads and address flooding before the next big hurricane hits. These are life and death things that need to be addressed now. Our families deserve it. I believe we are powerful when we work together. I look forward to working with you to make it happen.
Thank you, Ruben. The same question for you, Luis.
Thank you.
Opening remarks, 1.5 minutes. Give us your opening statement on this for this forum, but also answer the question, besides the people in District 37, what do you see as our single biggest asset and also the single greatest concern? How would you address that concern?
First of all, I want to thank you all for having me here today. My name is Luis Villarreal, and I'm a candidate for State Representative District 37. As the question stated, our greatest asset is our people. Not taking that into consideration, there's many great industries here in my district. District 37 is the industrial district for the Valley. We have 4 water ports, the Harlingen Port, Brownsville, Port Isabel San Benito, and Port Mansfield. We are the leader in industry, and we need to keep going forward. We have been selected by some of the world's largest companies like SpaceX to come here, and we need to keep investing and ensuring that our citizens here are prepared to take on those jobs and move forward. District 37 also has all 5 modes of transportation: airport, water, roads, rails, and a spaceport, something that makes us unique. And we need to make sure that we keep pushing forward with this innovation. What is our weakness? Our uninsured population. We need to make sure that our people are healthy, so that there's a healthy workforce and happy citizens. If people are not healthy, they cannot take these jobs and they cannot continue living. It is difficult to be taking care of your mother, your son during working hours and continue having a living wage. That is why we need to expand Medicare and ensure that everybody has access to health services. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luis. Okay, we'll go now to the 1 minute questions, 1 minute to answer these questions. And we're going to rotate. So we'll start with you, Luis. The first question, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you think the voters of District 37 should select you to represent them in Austin.
Thank you, Steve. I have 6 years of legislative experience at the Texas Capitol, drafting bills and riders for Texas Senate District 27. I know the process. I've been at the belly of the beast, and I know how to draft bills. I know how to write them. I know how to read them. I know how to amend them. It is important to have experience, and I'm the only one that's worked at the Capitol before. I did the work and the nitty-gritty. Second of all, have 2 bachelors and a master's. Have a bachelor's in government and public service, and I have a master's in public policy and management. And lastly, I'm a local businessman, and I know the struggles the business community is going through, and I know the issues they have to keep going forward with this pandemic. And that's why I think I'm the most qualified candidate for this position. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Luis. And the same question for you, Ruben. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you think the voters of District 37 should select you to represent them in Austin.
No, Steve, it's a great question, and thank you. I believe in delivering results for our families. As a member currently serving on the Texas Board of Education, I'm only one of 6 Democrats on that board. And still, we've been able to accomplish amazing things, like being the only Board of Education in the United States to have passed a Mexican-American Studies course unanimously with a 15-0 vote. Those things don't happen by accident. We need to be able to reach across party lines and work with those on the other side to make things happen. Our families need a representative that can deliver on day one. No one in this race has more experience serving our families. We have so much that we can do for our schools, for healthcare, for jobs, for infrastructure. But the reality is, Steve, that these things can't wait. And we need somebody who's going to be ready on day one.
Thank you. Next question will go to you, Ruben. You are running as a Democrat. Why?
I'm a lifelong Democrat. I think, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question, Steve, but I think we need to make sure that we support voting rights, that we support providing healthcare opportunities for everyone. We need to support women's access. We need to support all of these different things that make our communities so unique, all those things that we keep getting disenfranchised from. I mean, you see what's happening right here in House District 37. 11th hour amendment by one of the representatives in Austin was filed to rewrite that district in violation of the Texas Constitution. That's why I stepped up and filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas for that very issue, along with my friends, the Tejano Democrats, because I believe that representation should be chosen by people, not bureaucrats in Austin. And so when it comes to fighting for what's right, I think that's why I'm a Democrat.
Thank you. And the same question for you, Luis. You're running as a Democrat. Tell us why.
I'm running as a Democrat for many reasons, one of which is I worked under a Democrat for 6 years and I know the struggles. And second of all, I believe that Democrats have a heart. There are many issues that have been brought up over the years that's been Democrat-Republican issues. And I believe that when it comes to actually taking care of the people, the Democratic Party has done that. They have increased funding for healthcare. They have worked hard to ensure that individuals in the foster system, individuals in the medical system are taken care of. And I believe that society needs to take care of the weak and of the unheard and the people that don't have a voice, because sometimes they can't do it for themselves. And that's why we're here, to ensure that everybody gets a fair opportunity, because not everybody is born equal, but we can work hard to ensure that everybody has the same opportunities. And thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. The next question, I mentioned earlier that House District 37 has changed rather considerably from last time. I'd like both of you to tell us a little bit about District 37. You're getting to know it if you didn't already. You're doing your campaigning, you're knocking on doors, talking to folks. Tell us the characteristics of 37, and we should tell the voters as well. The reason we asked the question about why you're running as a Democrat, the way the lines have been drawn, this could be a competitive seat. Historically, we've always thought of every Texas House seat in the Rio Grande Valley as a Democratic stronghold, but this was drawn to give the Republicans their best chance of success. And so we know there are Republican candidates in District 37 as well in the race. And one of you, perhaps, or Frank, will get to challenge the Republican in November. So it's a competitive seat. Tell us, both of you, about 37, the unique characteristics. Luis, let's start with you.
Thank you, Steve. I first want to say that I think the district, yes, it may be competitive, but it brings a new voice to the area. It brings cities that haven't been heard in years. We have now Harlingen 100% with one representative, not split in half for voter count. We have Willacy County, again, in part of the district, now being brought up all the way from Rio Grande City to add voters to a district in that area. We have small communities that now have a voice. And I think that's vital, something that has lacked here for many years. Yes, it may be more competitive, but I welcome it because it's important to ensure that every small community gets a voice. And in this district, it's not about winning one city. You have to win every city, because if you don't, you will lose. And that's why I believe this district will hold our candidates more accountable, because it's not about one part of the district. It's about the entire district. And that's why I'm actually excited to run for this district. So thank you so much.
Let me just ask a follow-up, given what you said there, Luis. Like Ruben said earlier, there is a lawsuit out there challenging these district lines. Are you saying you like the district as it is and would rather nobody challenged legally through the courts the shape of this district?
Yes, I like the district the way it is. I believe in 1 month for a district, he's running for what's there, not to change it. It is important to know what's there, and this is a district Luis Villarreal, decided to run for, not for a district that I want lopsided for Democrat or for Republican. I'm here to win this district. It is to represent this area, not another part of the area, and to ensure that everybody gets a voice. You know, it's not evil on the other side. It's just a difference of opinion. And this will make sure that whoever wins this race is more accountable to both parties and for the Democratic Party. But remember, everybody gets a voice. Everybody gets an opportunity to vote. And it's not about Democrat or Republicans. It's about our citizens in our district and ensuring they get a fair representation. And I believe this district, at least when it comes to small cities, it does that. So I welcome this district and I welcome the challenge in November. And I'm very happy with the district. So thank you so much. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Ruben, I threw two questions at Luis there, so I've obviously got to give you 2 minutes to reply. First of all, tell us, the first question was, tell us about the district, the unique characteristics, what's special about 37, the way it is, the way it's been drawn. Tell us all about it, but also you perhaps give us more information about the lawsuit and your work on that lawsuit, why the district lines as they are shouldn't stand.
So thank you for that question, Steve. And let me just tell you, this district already has a special place for me. I already represent all of it on the Texas Board of Education. Every one of those school districts within the current configuration and the previous configuration, I already represent that entire district. I've spent time in the smallest school district to the largest school district within that district and its officials, and lots of time there helping its students and its schools. But, at the end of the day, I'm suing to protect voting rights. They're trying to silence your voice. This isn't about me not liking the district. It's about everybody being held accountable for what the state law says. And in this case, they violated the whole county provision law of the Texas Constitution when they wrote the district the way that they did. And that's simply what that lawsuit is about. If redistricting happens every year, I'm aware, but we want to make sure that districts are drawn in accordance with our laws. And laws were violated in creating this district. If at the end the courts deem that this district stands, then this is the district that I'm going to support and represent, no doubt.
Let me just say there that I wanted to give you the 2 minutes to answer that one, as I gave 2 minutes to Luis. So is that your answer? Anything else you want to add about this lawsuit?
We have a hearing coming up at the end of May. I've been told by the legal team that on one of the basis of claims that we might end up losing, but they believe that at the Texas Supreme Court, we actually have a basis for the whole rule, for the whole county rule, because they clearly violated the law. They clearly violated the state constitution. And, if we want to be a nation that follows the rules, then we need to lead by example. And what happened in that 11th hour amendment to rewrite this district on the whim of one state representative is in violation of those laws. And all we're asking is that people be held accountable when they do those things, right? And that's all this is about. At the end of the day, it's the people who should select their representatives, not the legislature, by the way they draw these maps.
Thank you for that. It's a good discussion there on the lawsuit that's pending at the moment. Next question, let's start with you on this one, Ruben. What are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Wow, that's easy. Obviously, expansion of Medicaid. People shouldn't go wondering if they need to pay for the light or whether they can afford to buy medication for their family, whether they're going to put food on the table or go to the doctor or vice versa. We have an opportunity to take Medicaid expansion, and this governor continues to reject it. That's obviously a clear top priority. Public education, as I mentioned before, there's not going to be a single stronger candidate in this race when it comes to issues of public education. With my 10 years of service on the Texas Board of Education, we need to fix flooding and drainage and infrastructure needs. God forbid the next big hurricane come, what's going to happen? It's going to be disastrous. We're going to have freezing weather at the latter part of this week. And you're already hearing natural gas companies fighting about these things, right? And what's happening? Governor Abbott's already taken more than $3.5 million in donations from these natural gas companies that are profiting off of us during these times. So fixing the grid is very important.
Thank you. And the same question for you, Luis. What are your top 3 priorities if elected? I think you're muted there, Luis.
That's a difficult question, as I have many priorities, but if I were going to choose 3, I would say expansion of Medicare, and Medicaid, like it was stated by my opponent. I think it's important to ensure that everybody has access to a doctor, to ensure a better quality of life, to ensure that our definition also includes mental health services. There's many individuals in our community who are suffering from mental health problems across all industries, across the entire district. Mental health needs to be one of our top priorities, as it's something that does not discriminate by color, race, or creed. It happens to everyone, and that's something that needs to be heavily addressed. And lastly, flood control. Our area needs help. As improvements happen throughout the valley, our district is where all the water ends up coming to. As you know, water drains to the ocean. So as our counterparts throughout the valley improve their infrastructure, we need to keep up. If not, all the water is going to end up stagnating in our district, and we need to work with the Water Development Board and different agencies to ensure we get the proper funding to fix those problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, I'll ask Luis if you will take this one first. During the 87th Texas legislature, in both the regular and the special sessions, there was a lot of controversy about Senate Bill 8, and that was the bill to change Texas election laws. The Republicans argued that Senate Bill 8 was needed to ensure the integrity of elections, while Democrats countered that the bill was merely a voter suppression bill. What is your position on the 2020 election and Senate Bill 8? That should be the 2022 election and Senate Bill 8.
I believe that was a bad bill. There's no doubt about it. Voter access is vital. And actually, during my tenure at the Texas Senate with Senator Lucio, I worked on legislation that would allow a pilot program to test an electronic driver's license that could be accessed in your phone. And it actually didn't make it out of committee, and we got it amended into a bill. And I cannot remember the actual bill number, and I'll provide that at a later date. It made it all the way to the governor's desk, and it was vetoed, believe it or not. One of the arguments that was told to me is that it would allow more access to people to go vote, as they would have easy access to identification. As you know, one of the barriers to vote is photo ID. As you know, I've worked on these issues, and I will continue working hard to ensure that everybody has the right to vote. It can be that we have made illegal drive-through voting when they were following all the regulations and standards, when showing their ID and following all the rules. We need to make it easy for people who have 2 jobs, 3 jobs to go vote, because voting is a fundamental right and we need to protect it.
Thank you. And the same question for you, Ruben. During the 87th Texas legislative session, the regular session, special session as well, a lot of controversy around Senate Bill 8, and that was the bill that changed Texas election laws. The Republicans that supported the bill argued that Senate Bill 8 was needed to ensure the integrity of the elections. Democrats opposing the bill said it was merely a voter suppression bill. What is your position on Senate Bill 8?
So I would have absolutely voted against it. And I think there's nothing more powerful than our vote. I think that's what the impetus was behind that bill. They're seeing that we're showing up to the polls in numbers, and every election cycle, those numbers continue to increase. And so Senate Bill 8 was nothing more than a way of trying to disenfranchise our voters. And those that are being impacted the most are Black and brown communities, are areas like us in deep South Texas. That's why they've made, in their eyes, House District 37 a competitive district under redistricting. I think the majority of Texas voters want to expand Medicaid. And I think they're afraid of that. I think they're afraid of what the voters will do when they realize the power that they have with their vote. And they shouldn't be afraid, because voting rights are important for every one of us, and it should be respected.
Thank you. Next question, I'll ask you to take this one first, Ruben. And I've read an opinion poll the other day that said that the voters of Texas really think this is a very important issue. So the question is, last winter, the state of Texas faced an unprecedented freeze and the failure of the electoral grid. Do you think the issues with our electoral grid were addressed during the last legislative session? And what would you do, if anything else, above and beyond what the legislature has done so far, to fix those issues with the grid?
You know, Steve, I remember us being very, very, very cold in our home. Like you, wondering, did we have enough food for our kids? Did we have enough blankets to keep them warm? You know, when over 200 people die in an event like that, because of the failure of one person, our governor, his inability, his inaction that caused that freeze to take place, I consider him complicit in those over 200 deaths that occurred. And then only to pocket $3.3 million in political contributions. Just a week and a half ago or so, the natural gas companies were out fighting about what's about to come up. The governor just made an announcement recently that, we may have another blackout that may occur, but it's not going to be as a result of the grid. They're already posturing these types of remarks. And so, no, Steve, they didn't fix it. And that's something that, as your next state rep, I will work to try to address.
Thank you. And the same question for you, Luis. As I say, this is a very important issue for voters, according to a recent opinion poll. And the question to you is, last winter, the state of Texas faced an unprecedented freeze and the failure of our electrical grid. Do you think the issues with the electrical grid were addressed by the legislature in the last session? And if not, what would you do to fix the issue?
So I was stated by my opponent, I do feel, and I'm saddened by the lives lost during the last freeze. I believe the issues have not been addressed. The Valley actually has a great resource of energy production here in Willacy County. Actually, in my private sector life, I helped develop Las Majadas Wind Farm, one of the largest renewable projects in 2021 with Papalote partners as local developers. And I'll tell you right now that we need more infrastructure when it comes to power grids and power lines. Local productions here in the Valley from our wind farms have been cut down to 20% because we do not have the capacity to transfer that energy up north because the power lines are at capacity. That's number one. So we need more transmission lines. Number two, there are innovative ideas like battery backups that are put at lift stations, power stations throughout the districts that could help alleviate some of those power demands to prevent the generators from peaking and overheating. There are many infrastructure needs that could be addressed, and I know those issues since I've worked in it myself. Thank you so much.
Quick follow-up, Luis. Ruben just said that he lays the blame for this issue at the feet of one door, namely the governor's office. And he just said there that Governor Abbott was complicit in the deaths of the 200 residents in Texas that died. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. I believe there was poor administration and poor management, yes. But I also believe that it's important to ensure that we elect the right candidate and make sure that we pass the correct type of legislation. It's all policy. And we need to ensure that we have the resources to address those problems. It's not about pointing blame at somebody. It's about making sure the industries with public-public partnerships, we could develop this infrastructure and keep moving forward. Let's stop playing the blame game and let's get something done. Because if we do not provide resources to these private companies, this is going to happen again and again. So we need to make sure as voters and elected officials that we push ERCOT to make new transmission lines. I don't even know this, but a transmission line takes about 10 years to actually be built with all the land work and right of way that needs to be collected. We need to make those processes easier to ensure that we have the proper infrastructure to make sure our lights are on in our district. It's not about saying it's this guy's fault or that guy's fault. It's about ensuring that we give the resources they need to push forward.
And Ruben, that was a follow-up question to Luis. Do you want to respond?
Clearly there's a problem with the grid. There is no question about that. There is fixes that need to occur. Could the governor have done more? Absolutely. Is he already going on TV even last week talking about what's going to be coming up in the coming weeks? They're already posturing and hinting that this is going to happen. And I don't disagree that we should work with the entities that are out there. However, when these same entities are writing $1 million donations to the governor, there's a real problem with that, Steve. And this cronyism that exists, it needs to end, right? And until we elect the right people that aren't going to be focused on that quid pro quo, then these things are going to continue. There was a call, like I said, with the governor. All of these entities were on, and the governor spent about 30 minutes with each of them. And, all he's saying is this is potentially going to still happen again, right? And And again, this man has the ability to help end this. And I don't think that he's doing what needs to get done. And so we need people in Deep South Texas that are going to stand and fight for these things because it matters. I do not want to be responsible for a Texan dying in House District 37 because I didn't do enough.
Thank you. Next question, Luis, it's your turn. Question number 7 here. Here it is. The 87th legislature passed controversial so-called constitutional carry legislation, which allows anyone at least over 21 years of age to open carry or concealed carry a firearm in the public areas without needing a special permit or license. What are your thoughts on this legislation?
I think that in hunting, as we need a permit to go shoot birds, we should need a permit to regulate guns. We need to make sure we have education courses. If you want to dove hunt, you need to go and learn how to use a shotgun and go to a class. You want to have a hand arm, you need to go to a class to ensure that you are capable of properly carrying that weapon and handling properly. We need to ensure that anybody who has a gun has a proper background check and that we work with our neighboring states through a connected infrastructural backgrounds to make sure that people don't just cross state lines to come and buy a weapon in our state. It's important to make sure that every American in Texas' right to have a firearm is respected, but it's also important to ensure that everybody who has one is held accountable and knows how to use that weapon properly, because it is not just their lives, it is everybody else that is there with them. And we need to ensure that those types of individuals who are not qualified to have a gun do not get a gun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the same question for you, Ruben. The 87th legislature passed controversial so-called constitutional carry legislation. It allows anyone over 21 years of age to open carry or carry in a concealed manner a firearm in public without needing a special permit or license. What are your thoughts on that legislation?
You know, I can tell you that I was at a barbershop getting our haircut with my son, and a man walks in with his son to get a haircut, and he's got a gun with a holster. My son asked, "Are you a police officer?" And the man answered no. And, you know, as we sat there, it made my son nervous, right? And you see my son, he's a big kid, right? Probably the biggest 7th grader you've seen. It makes him nervous to do that. I believe in gun ownership. I'm not suggesting that we take away anybody's guns, but we do need to have responsible gun laws. You know, I think it's important that we regulate who can carry a weapon, make sure that there's proper background checks, eliminate bump stocks and some of those things. There's sensible things that can be done that I think there's common ground, even with some Republicans against some of the polls that I've seen, where there's a middle of the road issues where we can find commonalities. And I think those are the types of things that we need to work towards to help avoid situations like the one my son lived, because that was a scary situation for him. He asked me if we can leave. We ended up getting a haircut somewhere else.
Thank you, Ruben. Next question goes to you, Ruben. First of all, we're talking now, this question's about border security. It's long been a hot topic, border security, in both Austin and Washington, D.C. The legislature in Austin has appropriated around $800 million biannually for the past several years to support border security operations. And Governor Abbott recently announced that the state of Texas was going to be funding a private border wall. What are your thoughts on the current state of our international border, and what kind of policies would you support related to border security, if any, given that this is supposed to be a federal issue?
So I think that's a terrible waste of state resources. I think Governor Abbott is pandering to the Trump base as he prepares to announce his vice presidency or presidency. I think those dollars should be funneled into our schools, into our community. I think we need to support our Border Patrol, who I believe are already doing a phenomenal job. I mean, you talk about a strong connection with family. You know, as you mentioned, there's a portion of Brownsville in the district. We live along border communities. You know, there's a strong, rich culture and heritage that we share with our sister cities across the border. They bring in a strong and strengthen our economy from all the shopping that they do. And we shouldn't be spending states' dollars on that type of situation. We should be spending it on education, not on in inhumane ways. And so I'd say we need to reinforce what our Border Patrol are doing and move away from spending $800 million that the governor continues to allocate.
Thank you. The same question for you, Luis. Border security has long been a hot topic in both Austin and Washington, D.C. The legislature has appropriated around $800 million biannually for the past several years to support border security operations. And Governor Abbott recently announced that the state of Texas was going to be funding a private border wall. What are your thoughts on the current state of our international border, and what kind of policies would you support related to border security, if any, given that it is supposed to be a federal issue?
So actually, I've had close experiences at the border. I actually own farmland at the border, about a couple of acres. And I use it for dove hunting. It's my favorite hobby. And I was out there shooting, and I don't know where you see a couple of immigrants just coming through, and it's a scary feeling to see a bunch of individuals just running through, and you're there by yourself over 2 or 3 people standing there. And it's a scary thing. And thankfully, when you own land on the border, you get a Border Patrol liaison. I was able to reach out, and Border Patrol went out right away. This is an issue that exists and that needs to be addressed. I don't believe state dollars should be spent on this, as the federal government should be carrying all the costs associated to this. And if the state is spending any type of money, I believe it requires local input, something that I know is not being done by our top leaders in Austin. It requires them to be talking to our local state representatives and state senators to ensure we actually have input. As you know, that policy of $800 million passed with little support from border delegation. So thank you so much.
And a follow-up there, Luis, specifically Governor Abbott's private border wall.
So I believe that should be being done by the federal government if there's any border wall whatsoever. That's number one. Or number two, the border wall, there's always a caveat. It brings jobs to the area. They're building a wall here and they're hiring local contractors to build this wall, local subcontractors. So there's always a caveat. As a local businessman, I think it's important to ensure that if there's going to be any expenditure of money at the border, it's done with local contractors here in the Valley, with local companies. So as far as the border wall is concerned, I believe that there's no necessity for it. I think it should be invested in more man infrastructure, more Border Patrol agents, more, in the case of Texas, more DPS agents to ensure the security of our community. But that's basically my opinion. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. And I'll give you a follow-up opportunity as well, Ruben, specifically about the state's border wall as opposed to the federal government's border wall.
Again, I think it's just the governor playing politics. Steve, I'm not here to play politics. I'm here to work. I'm here to work for the people that I represent. I think those dollars are better spent expanding broadband access to help our kids. If this pandemic taught us anything, when I worked along with the Board of Education and Texas Education Agency on Project Connectivity, we put over 5 million digital devices in the hands of kids, and yet we were still seeing a failure. You'd go out to school districts like La Jolla, school districts like San Pedrito, and other school districts throughout deep South Texas and across the state, and you've got buses parked outside of libraries or parking lots, and you've got moms and dads sitting in the back seat of a car so that their child during those times can get the broadband access that they need to get an education. You know, so rather than building it a wall, spend it investing in our future, our children, those professionals that are working in those classrooms, educating our kids.
Thank you. The next question goes to Louise. Our K through 12 educational system, according to many, is in crisis, with many teachers leaving the profession due to the stress stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic. If elected, what would you do to address the teachers' concerns and ensure our schools have enough teachers to provide a quality education for our children?
So first of all, I believe that teachers are being underappreciated. They are heroes. They're out there every day today, in the middle of the pandemic, in their classrooms, dealing with students and children that may not have the most hygienic practices. So they're there to teach them how to be more responsible and risking their lives if they have not been vaccinated to get infected by COVID. That's number one. Number two, we need to do, like everything in life, an adjustment to inflation on their salaries. However, as we know, this is a difficult task as we have limited resources here in the state of Texas. I think school districts need to value our teachers. We need to provide incentives like loan forgiveness. If they're at school learning and getting certified to be a teacher, we need to provide them the ability to get their loans forgiven and have a financial incentives by providing them with tools to be able to purchase homes at lower interest rates, a lower down payment, so that they could get the most out of the dollar and help our community.
Thank you. And the same question for you, Ruben. Our K through 12 educational system is, many people say, currently in crisis, with many teachers leaving the profession due to the stress stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic. If elected, what would you do to address the teachers' concern and ensure our schools have enough teachers to provide a quality education for our children?
Teachers are leaving the education profession, Steve, there's no doubt. My wife is an educator, and it makes me angry every time the governor tries to pit parents and teachers against each other. You know, we're all parents. We all want the best for our kids, right? Our number one focus should be the children. For me, it always has been, keep them safe in an environment where they can learn. That starts with safe schools, keeping them safe, healthy, and open. I've been working tirelessly throughout this pandemic to help school districts. I spoke with the superintendent of Sherryland just the other day, Dr. Vidauti. She told me that she told her team, place me anywhere you want, just don't have me driving a bus, because there's such a shortage on teachers. They had over 1,300 students out. Spoke with the superintendent in one of the smallest districts in Willacy County. They had to close an extra week because they didn't have a single COVID test to offer students or employees who wanted to get tested. I had to find a private pharmacy to come and do a COVID testing clinic with that district so they can reopen. And what ended up happening on that first day that they reopened, over 25% of those that tested positive. This is a failure on the state's part, Steve. Those $800 million that he's spending, this border wall, these things that Governor Abbott is doing, that's where we'll find the money to address those things that we need to address for our schools.
Thank you, Ruben. I want to keep it down to a minute if I can, because we've got a lot of good questions still to go and not much time left. If you'll take this next one, Ruben, take this one first, another education question. Governor Greg Abbott has signed a bill that prescribes how Texas teachers can talk about current events and America's history of racism in the classroom. His signature on that bill makes Texas one of a handful of states across the country that have passed such legislation, aiming to ban the teaching of quote unquote critical race theory in K through 12 public school classrooms. What are your thoughts on critical race theory and the bill signed by Governor Abbott?
I think our governors shouldn't be pitting our parents against teachers. We need to be teaching our kids the skills that they need to get ready for a global economy. That's where we need to be. They need to know what the real history is, the good, the bad, and the ugly, Steve. This is why I worked tirelessly to get a Mexican American Studies course approved, because we wanted students in a state that has 52% Latino students to understand the rich culture of the Latino community. And then we followed that up by getting an African-American studies course approved. And these are things that we've been trying to make available. And as those things have blossomed, you've got this governor who's putting these critical race theory bills out there, trying to pit parents against teachers, when all teachers want to do is teach the truth and offer it in a factual and conceptual way. And you've got legislation that is trying to stop that. And it's unfortunate.
Same question for you, Luis. Governor Abbott signed a bill that prescribes how Texas teachers can talk about current events and America's history of racism in the classroom. His signature of that bill, on that bill, makes Texas one of a handful of states across the country that have passed such legislation. The legislation aims to ban the teaching of, quote, critical race theory, end quote, in K through 12 public school classrooms. What are your thoughts on critical race theory and the bill signed by Governor Abbott?
First of all, I want to say that during my university days, I was a supplemental instructor for history teacher here in UTRGV. And something he always said is history is taught to the eyes of the victor. That means that it doesn't matter what history you're covering, there's always going to be a different view. And we need to understand to respect every single view that's out there, no matter what. And just because you disagree with what is being said doesn't mean that's the full truth, because history is this interpretation of somebody who saw the events happen. And that limits the teacher's ability to teach these students the rich history that we have throughout the United States. It is important to know the ugly and the nice to ensure we don't repeat our mistakes. Because as a society, the only way one can know something is happening is by having some previous context. So I think it is very important that these types of legislations do not occur anymore and these type of bills are repealed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Luis, would you take this one first? Back to COVID-19. Our nation faces a severe nursing shortage, which has only been exacerbated by COVID-19. It's estimated that 1 in 4 nurses are retiring or taking time off due to burnout. Hospitals are struggling to staff COVID-19 units and to provide care for routine health issues like heart attacks, car accidents, and elective surgeries. If elected, what is your plan to address the nursing shortage in Texas?
I'm proud to say that my sister just graduated this December as a nurse from UTRGV. And she just started actually at Valley Baptist. And I want to tell you that it's a difficult job. It is an extremely difficult job. It is very taxing, even as a new nurse with no previous experience. It's a difficult job and it's something that must be addressed. One of the barriers to entry is ensuring that we provide the universities the resources to hire qualified staff. It's difficult to hire a nurse to teach a classroom when they could make $100,000, $150,000 doing travel nursing when they have experience. We need experienced teachers in the classrooms, and we need to give universities the funding required to get those certified teachers to be in the classroom teaching these students. Because at the end of the day, a building is not going to address a problem. We need teachers, and we need to make sure they get a fair compensation for their time, because at the end of the day, without a teacher, they cannot learn. And it's important to ensure that universities have the resources to pay those salaries they require.
Thank you. And the same question to you, Ruben. Our nation faces a severe nursing shortage, which has only been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. It is estimated that 1 in 4 nurses are retiring or taking time off due to burnout. Hospitals are struggling to staff COVID-19 units and to provide care for routine health issues like heart attacks, car accidents, and elective surgeries. If elected, what is your plan to address the nursing shortage in Texas?
You know, Steve, one of the things that I've been doing in the Texas Board of Education is I was part of a fact-finding trip with Far San Juan Alamo ISD, Dr. King, its former deputy superintendent back then, Dr. Garcia, and some of the folks from DHR. And in the car, they came up with this project to create the first of its kind program that would graduate nurses right out of high school. They got a pilot approval. It's a program that is still happening to this day at FAR San Juan Alamo. It's small in terms of the number of cohort of students, but taking that program to scale to help our high school kids be ready on day one at graduation, I think that would be a great start. You know, I've also recently sent a letter to Governor Abbott, asking him in the interim right now with what's happening in our hospitals. I asked Governor Abbott in that letter that I sent him a few weeks ago to send the National Guard to help in some of our hospitals. They're being overrun and understaffed. And rather than have them at the border, send them into our hospitals for triage, patient intake, or any other areas where they can be helpful and resourceful to help lift some of those burdens from our hospitals.
Thank you. And the next question is about international trade and the importance of international trade for our economy. I'll ask this question of you, Ruben, first. It's said that the international trade and our trade with Mexico is the lifeblood of the Valley's economy. How do you, if elected, how do you go about ensuring that the Rio Grande Valley is open for business? What policies need to be enacted at the state legislature level to ensure that the lifeblood of our economy, our trade with Mexico continues without any problems? And another part to the question, what do you do when you go to Austin, and what do you do to ensure that your colleagues in the Texas House do not damage our economy, damage our community with negative commentary about our region because of our proximity to Mexico?
Yeah, we need to talk about common sense reform and solutions. You know, being from Brownsville and being born in a border community, you know, as someone who went back and forth across the border all the time, I can tell you that Mexico, there's clearly our strongest economic development partner in this border region. The wait times at the border crossings in the Rio Grande Valley are outrageous. We are ready for an additional bridge to help alleviate some of that traffic, to help with the ability to increase that business that comes from our northern border, or Mexico, into the United States, which is our biggest border crossing. I was just on a Zoom the other day. They were talking about the FAR Bridge. It was on pace to exceed $30 billion, right? In terms of the amount of products that are coming in and out of that border. You know, we need to be able to get to that, especially when we have so many ports, when we have a spaceport, when we have all of these natural resources. We need to be able to look towards that and figure out how to expand it. And I think another bridge would be a good way of doing that.
Actually, Ruben, we interviewed the FAR Bridge Board director, the director of the International Bridge in FAR, and it's actually up to 40 billion. When the final numbers come out, for 2021, imports and exports combined at the FAR Bridge, an all-time record 40 billion in 2021. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, but the same question to you, Luis, international trade. I know that's an issue that you know about. It's said that the trade with Mexico is the lifeblood of the Valley's economy. How do you go about ensuring, if you're elected, how do you go about ensuring that the Valley remains open for business and that the trade continues to prosper? And that supplementary question, how do you ensure your colleagues in the Texas House do not damage our economy, damage our community with any negative commentary about our region because we border Mexico?
Thank you so much, Steve. With my partners and I, we cross trucks every day at the FAR Bridge with vegetables and fruits here. We know the struggles that are there. One of the biggest issues is ensuring that the bridges have the proper infrastructure to process all of these trucks that go through. something that I work when I was working in the Texas Senate is ensuring that the Donna Bridge had empty container traffic going south to alleviate some of the overflow of the FAR Bridge. I know the issues, and it's our job to ensure that we provide the proper infrastructures by passing overweight corridors and providing additional funding to keep the streets up for these trucks to move. As you know, an 18-wheeler has the effect of about 40 cars going through there every time an 18-wheeler passes. And those costs are passed on to the importers and exporters through overweight permits. And sometimes they'll provide a barrier to entry as there are large fees for them to pay. As you know, here in my district, we have the Port of Brownsville overweight corridor that has helped a lot in ensuring that we're able to move products from the border to the port. Thank you.
Thank you. And a follow-up question, Luis, the same question, but if elected, would you bring your colleagues from the Texas House that maybe perhaps don't know the border region, don't know the Rio Grande Valley, just they hear about it at the national, with the national coverage or state coverage, and perhaps maybe get the wrong impression that we're a war zone, as is said in some places. Will you bring your colleagues down here to learn what the Valley is really all about?
Yes. So as you know, the Valley Partnership has a Valley tour every legislative session. And I think that's important for them to see the amount of business and infrastructure that's here in the area. We need to ensure that they know that their groceries in their district are supplied by our voters. Our infrastructure here, our cold storage rooms hold all of their vegetables as they're being transferred from Mexican vehicles into American vehicles to keep going north and supply H-E-B, Walmart, and across industries. We are the lifeblood of grocery stores here in FAR. FAR is one of the largest fruit, I think it's the largest fruit and vegetable importer in our region. So we need to ensure that they understand the value that our districts provides to them. And they go through our interstate every single day. We need to ensure TxDOT also provides the proper funding to ensure our roads are up to quality, to ensure that business does not stop, and we have access to the rest of the markets here in Texas. Thank you.
Thank you. And that same follow-up question to you, Ruben, if elected, would you bring Texas House members down to the Valley that perhaps don't know this area very well to counter some of the stereotypical views that they might read about at the national and in the national and state coverage?
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I mean, it's something that I do now on the Texas Board of Education. I want to make sure that other members in the state of Texas that serve on my board understand that our region is different than other regions in the state of Texas, right? And so what they might be seeing in the news isn't the reality of what's happening on the ground. So I've done that type of work already. And as a state representative, I want to make sure that I continue to highlight the wonderful things that are going on down here. I believe in collaboration and building partnerships, and there's only one way to do that, right? I've always believed that there's more that unites us than divides us. And by reaching our hands to our brothers and sisters in the legislature, bringing them down here so that they can see for themselves the impact that they can have by supporting legislation that would make the cross country journey of our goods and services easier is good not only for the Valley, but it's good for the state of Texas.
Thank you. We're almost up. Our 1 hour is probably passed already, but I want to just get one more question in before we allow you both to have your closing remarks. So this one, the last one here is for you, Luis, first. At 18.4%, the state of Texas has the highest uninsured rate in the country. Approximately 5.2 million people in Texas are uninsured. If elected, what would you do to address the state of Texas's high uninsured rate?
Thank you, Steve. I want to say that I've worked through the senator's office for many years trying to push this expansion. As it was done last legislative session, a bill was introduced by Republican members to expand this, and obviously didn't make it out of committee. We need to keep working hard. But additional to that, what it's in our hands, we need to make sure that we get our fair share of the money that's already here in the state of Texas to ensure that our people get the proper medical care. As far expansion goes, it's up to the hands of the governor. He's decided not to, and the legislator could have passed legislation, but they decided not to. So right now, with the marbles that we have in our hands, I want to make sure that the Valley gets a fair share as we keep working hard to expand access. In the meantime, I'm going to keep working hard, passing legislation and working with the local partners if I get elected, passing legislation to ensure that we have nurses, doctors, and proper funding. Thank you.
Thank you. And the same question for you, Ruben. At 18.4%, the state of Texas has the highest uninsured rate in the country. Approximately 5.2 million people in Texas are uninsured. If elected, what would you do to address the state of Texas's high uninsured rate?
Now, there's no doubt that Texas leads in the country on highest uninsured rates, and that's unfortunate. I spent a lot of time in schools, Steve. I remember visiting campus, and I remember meeting with a student, and as I was talking to this young man, he was telling me how he was saving his lunch money because his uncle couldn't afford his diabetes medicine. That's probably one of the most difficult school visits that I had been on. Kids shouldn't have to feel that sense of responsibility. That burden is on us, the grown-ups, the individuals who know right from wrong. When you've got 5.2 million people who are uninsured, you know how many students we have in our Texas public schools? Just under 5.5 million. Imagine if all of those were our kids. As parents, we want better for our kids, and it's up to us to stand in the gap for everyone that doesn't have a voice in Austin and fight to make sure that this region gets its fair share, especially when it comes to health.
Thank you. And that's not all the questions we had. We had a few more, but we're going to pause at that point and say, let's end that part of the show and go on to the final closing remarks. You've both got a minute each. The Futuro committee set these questions in advance, and so I know there's lots of negative stuff out there about different candidates, so we're not going to ask you to address any of those issues this evening. We had these questions set in advance, and we're sticking to that script. So that's all the questions we have. We just got the closing remarks, 1 minute each. Let's start with you, Ruben.
Yeah, so thank you again for inviting me to be here. I believe change starts now, and it starts here. If you're watching this tonight, it's because you care, and you need to know you are powerful. We can deliver these changes to our families, supporting our schools, expanding Medicaid, fixing flooding problems. We're home to an international port and to SpaceX. We should be leading the new green economy, and we should be attracting high-paying jobs, high-tech jobs, not kids sleeping on floors of an old Walmart. We can do these things working together and using our power to vote. But these things can't wait. I will be ready on day one. Don't just take my word for it. Most of the Valley delegation of state representatives that are in office have already endorsed our candidacy. Listen to them, the folks that I'd be working with at the state capitol. I respect each of the candidates who have tossed their name into this ring. I look forward to working with them to get things accomplished, but that work starts here. Thank you, Futuro RGV, for inviting me to this forum.
Thank you. And your closing remarks, Luis, 1 minute, please. You're muted, Luis.
Thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm here running today to ensure the people who do not have a voice get heard. I have many experiences throughout my district and throughout the district that basically shows that our community is in dire need. And that's why I'm running for office. It is important that the candidate gets elected has past experience, that they are local and they're invested in their community, and that they're responsible citizens covering all of their costs as a citizen, paying property taxes, being current with sales taxes in all aspects. That is why I am running, because I am invested in the local community. I am pushing forward, and as a local developer, bringing new life to Harlingen as I develop historical buildings in the area. I have the experience, and I ask today for your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes the candidates forums, the candidate forum for Texas House District 37. I want to thank the two candidates for coming along today and answering our questions, Luis Villarreal and Ruben Cortez. We do hope the voters in District 37 learned a lot. I was very pleased to get the answers and to hear the two candidates address issues we feel that are important. So thank you both very much. We hope you've enjoyed it at home. I'm going to pass it everything over now to Nedra to close.
I had to take me off mute. I want to really thank our candidates. I want to thank you, Steve, but I especially want to thank all of you people who are out there watching and trying to take the time to learn about our candidates. We have a very important message with Futuro. We're doing these forums with both Republican and Democrat candidates, but it's you people. If you're an American, if you care about our democracy, then you have to learn about our candidates. They're not all the same. They have different ideas, different perspectives on how to solve our problems. But you, the voters, have to be informed. So go to our Futuro RGV website, listen to the forums, go to the League of Women Voters, vote for 11, and learn about the candidates. Be an informed voter. And then you got to go out and vote. It's not enough to be informed. You have to vote, no matter how hard it is to get your vote done, you've got to vote. So I will say what I always say for Futuro: be an informed voter, exercise your duty, exercise your right, and exercise your privilege to vote to keep a strong RGV Valley, a strong Texas, a strong country, and a strong America. So thank you very much and good night.